When a misunderstanding with Filch leads to detention after school, you're stuck babysitting Slytherin's bad boy. A Matteo Riddle X Ravenclaw reader's story. Birds cawed, and the air was growing slightly warmer. As you kicked your feet back and forth over the bridge of the edge of Hogwarts courtyard, over the pond, your two friends were studying for the potions exam they had later today. Your 5th year had seemed to fly past you. You meant to write to your parents about the upcoming break, but you were still deciding if you should go home or not. "What's that look for?" One of your friends spared you a glance. You blew a lock of hair out of your face and shrugged. "Are you guys going home for the upcoming holiday?" "Well, yeah. My parents and I have a tradition, you know this." Your other friend butted in. She rolled her eyes. "My brother is being a pain, though." "Yeah, but..." A smile pressed to your lips, as easy as the light in the sky. "Don't you just want to do something else for once? I mean, we are always on a schedule." They frowned at each other. "That's kind of expected of us, you know? You weren't complaining when you beat Hermione last semester," she pointed out, her blonde hair curling around her as if it were something come to life. Your eyes rolled and you leaned back on your hands. "That's different. I don't mean give up on schoolwork completely." They shook their head and laughed. "Okay, sure." You opened your mouth to say something more, but they had already gone back to studying. A few minutes later, the bell rang, and they had to get their things together. "Wish us luck." You waved a hand. "Yeah, good luck. Like you guys even need it," says the one with a free period. You snorted a laugh. "I'll see you after school, in the common room?" "Yep, see you." "Bye," they murmured at the same time. You watched them speed back towards campus. It was pretty warm out today. Glancing around, you shrugged. "Why not?" You moved your bag to sit on the stony pathway and lowered your head onto the shoulder of the bridge, fixing your skirt when you were finally flat against the stone. "This is nice." You found yourself prying deep into thought. You weren't sleeping. That would be too dangerous, but you were lost, reflecting on the world around you. It was as if time had stopped, as if questions about the universe seemed more significant than your DA quiz on Monday. But the sun was hitting your face just right. It was shaded slightly? Wait, that wasn't right. You peeled an eye open, jerking back when you came face to face with Filch. "Ditching class now, are we?" "What? No, He clicked his tongue and shook his head. "I expected better from you, Ravenclaws." "But Don't even try it. Get your things." He motioned toward your bag beside his feet. You scrambled to pick yourself up. "Wait, that's not... I have..." "You 5th years," he scoffed. "What are you going to say? I have a free period?" "But I do." "Right, only 6th and 7th years have free periods." "I know that." You were starting to get a bit irritated. The headmaster gave me a special cause. He gave it to a few other students this year." Filch halted, and you almost crashed into his back. You stepped away, making a face at his smelly robes. "You expect me to believe that?" "Yes." "I'm not as gullible as I look, am I?" It was useless. You would have to get Dumbledore involved. You were one of the few students who were offered a free period this year. You knew Hermione Granger had been one of the other students, but it was clear by the way she seemed to rush back and forth and the way she was always studying that she had declined. The other students were a mystery. Well, you knew Draco Malfoy had one because you'd caught him in the library once. He was alone, looking solemn. To be honest, you hadn't known he was that great of a student. You never really checked the scoreboards because you always knew you'd place high enough for your parents to get off your backs. "Listen to me," you shouted after him as he began marching again. He marched back into the castle while ignoring your pleas. The next time you got a word out of him, it wasn't directed at you. "Hey," he shouted, jabbing a finger towards something. "Stop right there." He began chasing something. You huffed, wondering if you would have to follow him around for the rest of the day because he was on some silly goose chase. You heard his creepy laugh as you rounded the courtyard. Phil scratched the back of someone's shirt in the open stone hall. You snorted. Both glanced at you when the sound echoed through the hall. Your shoes clicked as you moved closer to the scene. There in front of you was Slytherin's esteemed prince, Matteo Riddle, caught in the clutches of Filch. His annoyed expression said it all. He looked like a mouse caught in a cat's trap. What I would do for a photo of this. You were grinning until Filch turned his attention back to you. You think this is funny? Well, you can join him. I didn't even do anything. You crossed your arms. Skipping classes is not allowed. You felt your eyes rolling towards the back of your skull. I already told you You already have one detention. Do you want another? But a second detention it is. A snort. You glared at Riddle. His cool brown eyes met yours, a cheeky smile showing a single dimple. Oh, you think that's funny? You can join her. Filch let him go just as a groan escaped him. I had plans later, Filchy. You call me that again, it'll be a third for you, Riddle. You were smart enough to keep your amusement in your head this time. Come on, then. Filch cast a spell. You knew it, but you didn't know it well. Your body froze as you could see Riddle in the corner of your peripheral vision. He was frozen too. A second later, your body relaxed and you stumbled forward, catching yourself right before you fell. You glanced toward Riddle, expecting him to laugh. He didn't, but his mouth quivered, making you think he wanted to. You stuck out your tongue and spun around, readying for more explanations of how this wasn't fair. But Filch was already heading off, saying, I'll see you two after school. A hand shot out to stop him, but your words caught in your throat. Riddle began walking, and soon he was behind you, leaning over your shoulder. Just let him go. You won't be able to convince him otherwise. Have a lot of experience with him, do you? He opened his mouth, but instead of words, amusement took the form of a smile. You started walking toward the Ravenclaw dorms. You would need to leave a note with information for your friends explaining exactly why you wouldn't be hanging out with them this afternoon. It irked you. Filch had never given you any issues in the previous years, and he hadn't been around much this year either. See you after school, Ravenclaw? You held in the urge to shoot a curse at him as you stomped away. She took his interest the moment he saw her. She was laughing. Her head was thrown back, and she almost had a hand up as if she wanted to cover her smile. He didn't want her to. Theo and the rest of his friends had paused. He knew they had been watching him, trying to figure out what had made him stop so abruptly. They had been walking through the second-floor halls, just coming up from classes with those idiotic Gryffindors. She must have come from class as well. But she was sitting on one of those couches on the first floor, and he just happened to glance over the railing. She'd caught his attention. Her image had hit him so suddenly. At first, he thought it was because she was pretty, but there were plenty of pretty girls in his year. So he knew that couldn't be it. Then what? Matteo ignored the bubbling questions. His friends wouldn't shut up the rest of the day, and whenever they passed her in the halls, they'd all glance at him. She never seemed to notice, though, which made him question. Why? Ravenclaws weren't Gryffindors. They weren't his arch-nemesis. In fact, his father had mentioned something about how Ravenclaws were more similar to Slytherins than they liked to admit. He found himself following her. He knew it was wrong and creepy, but again, neither her nor anyone ever seemed to notice. If they hadn't said anything. If they had said something, Matteo would have heard it and shut it down by now. A huff escaped him. The sun was out. It felt nice on his face. He hadn't planned to get caught by Filch. He hadn't planned to follow her and her friends out there, though, okay, it might not seem that way. Draco had wanted to get some fresh air, and by the looks of it, you could use some sun, Lorenzo had joked, earning a back-of-the-head smack from Pansy. Blaise had chuckled, and Matteo had felt himself smile slightly, shaking his head. That was until Theo pointed out her and her friends. Isn't that your little Ravenclaw? Don't call her that. Matteo had rolled his eyes, but they landed on her. And that was, in fact, her. surrounded by her friends, but she looked different. Her smile wasn't as bright. She looked almost solemn. He'd felt a pit in his stomach. He didn't know much about Ravenclaws. He stayed very much to his home turf, but over the 2 years, he could gather well enough to know that there was always some immense pressure on them, not unlike what him and his friends had to endure from their own parents. They'd followed them, slightly, but as the Ravenclaws headed for the Hogwarts Bridge, Matteo and his friends steered toward the forest. They had a small hideout there. They called it the clubhouse, picked up from some Muggle children's book. But soon, the bell had rung, and they were heading back toward the school. Matteo meant to track his friends, but then he noticed the 2 Ravenclaws without their 3rd member, and it occurred to him to wander over to the bridge, just to make sure. He told himself. It wasn't just to make sure. He knew almost without a doubt she would be there. He wanted to see her. Maybe this was his chance to talk to her. He would think it odd. Just 2 students who happened to be alone in the same place. That's what his brain had convinced him of anyway. Her face was calm, a complacent smile, brightened by the sun, hiding somewhere behind the trees that shaded her body halfway. He hadn't realized it, but his heart began to slow. Watching her was relaxing, as he had come to know. Damn, now he really did sound like a freak. He shook himself out of his stupor. Okay, he was there. He was going to do it. He was going to talk to her. Any second now. But he hadn't moved then. And he hadn't moved a second later. And soon it would be too late because Filch and his mangy cat appeared from seemingly nowhere and were now towering over her. It turned into something from a horror film. He'd watched them, laughing at her trying to explain why she wasn't in class. He knew why. Dumbledore had offered a few 5th-year students the opportunity typically only reserved for the 6th years and up. Matteo found his amusement dying when Filch had begun moving in his direction. He ran back to the castle, careful to not alert his fry head of a cat. But it had been useless, because Filch had seen him anyway. He didn't want her to know. He was afraid of what she'd think of him, afraid that she'd know just by looking that he'd been watching her. Nervous? He murmured, just now figuring out what it was he had been feeling. He scoffed. No way. But he couldn't shake the thought. The bell for the last class rang, and he sighed, sitting up. He was somewhere deep in the castle, to be honest. Even he didn't know how he'd found this place. It was in the attic of the castle, but Hogwarts had many attics. He didn't know which this one was. He only knew it was near Ravenclaw Tower, and no, he hadn't planned it. It had just been a happy coincidence. He'd found it in his 2nd year, when Draco had finally begun to stop pot to this and pot to that. Blaise and Lorenzo had called it his potty mouth year. A memory of them making fun of their friend lightened his heart. It made having detention 2 days in a row a bit easier. Even though today was Friday, and tomorrow was supposed to be a rest day. Though he'd only had detention a handful of times, he'd never been this elated. And perhaps a little Ravenclaw had something to do with it. He shook his head, wondering why his mouth was so full of smiles today. You drug your feet across Hogwarts, yawning as you made your way down the hall. The spell Filch had cast gave your subconscious the exact directions to where he'd wanted to meet him after school. You had sat in the common room until the last bell rang. As soon as it rang, your body stood and began heading towards wherever Filch must have been. Students were milling about, chatting everywhere you turned, and it lit a fire under your butt. This could have been you. It should have been you. It was going to be you. But because that Dinglemutt didn't have a clue as to his master's new proclamation, you were being unfairly punished. You headed out toward the quad and rounded the castle, where you were going to the Quidditch field? Great. What could you possibly be doing? Cleaning gear? You whimpered, just thinking about how smelly those locker rooms must be. Ah, she arrives. You fisted your hands and set your mouth, but kept quiet. Where's Riddle? Your eyes floated around the grassy space, searching for the Slytherin. Don't worry about him. He'll be down here. Filch checked the time on his wand. Now, follow me. Matteo was grinning. He couldn't be grinning when he headed into the locker rooms. They were on the Slytherin Ravenclaw side, so now, thankfully, he wouldn't be cleaning some snot-nosed Gryffindor's uniform. Matteo shuddered at the thought. Filch couldn't be that cruel. Could he? Best not to find out. Someone, definitely Filch, cleared his throat and stepped outside, eyeing him expectantly. Well, go on. She can't clean them alone, can she? Matteo resisted the urge to roll his eyes and stuffed his hands into his pockets before walking in. She had her hair pulled back with a clip. Matteo had never seen her like this. Well, okay, he'd seen her with her hair pinned up, but she was all sweaty and her sleeves were rolled back, his eyes scrunched together. Why was it so hot? He clicked his tongue and shook his head. Are you trying to off yourself before the owls? You glared, watching him pull out his wand. You bit your cheek when he cast a silent spell. You were still working on those. It peeved you and your nails dug into your palms. Just another reason to hate him, you supposed. Why are you looking at me like that? He cooed, beginning to unbutton his sleeves and roll them up. It seemed he'd had the same idea you had. He only wore his white uniform button-up. It was weird, seeing him without his regular attire. He looked different, though you couldn't be sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Wind hit your face, and your sweat began cooling. You paused, dropping the scrub on the space near the sink. It's nice, right? He saddled up beside you and you stumbled back, surprised. I don't bite. He frowned, looking annoyed. He was aware of who he was, right? Nevertheless, he wasn't. You shook your head. I'm not afraid of you. You just startled me is all. Oh, really now? He raised a brow. Really? Your jaw locked. He watched as you stepped forward, standing your ground. It was cute. His frown turned into a lopsided grin, which only made you huff. Aren't you using magic? He glanced around the room. It'd be much easier. He disabled my magic. You frowned, looking at your wand in the side pocket of your skirt, disappointedly. Riddle craned his neck to follow your gaze. He leaned over you slightly, and your heart began to pick up pace. He smelled good, like mahogany, teakwood, and morning dew. You didn't know why those two specific smells came to you. It didn't seem right for the Dark Lord's son to smell like something as innocent as morning dew, and yet here he was. What? His head turned slightly, and he was glancing down at you, his body slightly over yours. You swallowed and shoved him away, averting your gaze back onto the uniform. Are you going to stand there and help, or what? Matteo paused, as a thought came to him. Whose uniform is that? I don't know. Why does it matter? You picked the sponge back up, but he snatched the top from the sink before you could. Hey, you're going to get water everywhere. He waved a wand in front of your face, and you frowned. Apparently, Filch had favorites. He glanced at the number. His shoulders relaxed a bit, and he handed it back to you. Someone you know? You snorted, taking back the uniform. You could say that. He threw you a cheeky smile before spinning around and using his magic to clean the rest of the uniforms. So not fair, you murmured, shaking your head. Hey, it's not my fault you were caught skipping classes. I wasn't skipping classes, you shouted. I had a free period. Riddle shrugged. You heard what Filch said. You are really getting on my nerves. You are really starting to get on my nerves. He held his hands up, pressing both lips together to suppress another smile. You ground your teeth and, without thinking, threw the sponge at him. He blinked as it bounced off his cheek. A gasp escaped you, and your hand shot to cover the laughter that threatened to trickle out. I am... You snorted. So... Another snort. Sorry? Riddle's mouth dropped open slightly, and his tongue circled the inside of it. His eyes landed on yours again, and he watched you watch him wipe the soap off his cheek. Are you asking for war? He called you by your surname. Your heart studded. You don't remember ever giving him your name. You know me? His amusement died instantly. What are you talking about? I don't. You raised a brow and crossed your arms, frowning. Did you not just call me by my name? He stepped backward as you walked toward him, cornering him into a wall. You knew my name. So, I know lots of people's names. That's a shit excuse, Riddle. As you got closer, you noticed something on his face. It was a shade redder. Was he blushing? You couldn't believe your eyes. Your footsteps halted. You weren't dumb. You could connect the dots easily enough. Matteo Riddle, do you have a crush on me? His eyes jumped out of their sockets when his head jerked up to face you again. What? No, It was odd. This was a side you were certain no one had ever seen from him. He was a riddle for Merlin's sake, a Slytherin. But right now, he didn't look like any of the things either of those titles were known for. He looked different from your everyday point of view of him. He looked like any other boy in your year. You stepped closer and without thinking leaned over and poked his cheek. He watched you do it, and he didn't move. A cheesy grin spread across your face. Matteo Riddle, were you stalking me? He stayed silent, but his face darkened in color even though the locker rooms were pretty chilly now. Noise startled him out of his trance. You watched his cool facade slide over his boyish embarrassment, but it was too late. You had seen everything you'd needed to. Matteo? You recognized that voice. Hey, you're here already? Coach wanted us in early. We sent Rickles out to find you. What are you doing here? Soon, the locker room was filled and eyes were all on you, your lips pierced, and though you didn't know why, you glanced at Riddle, as if he were supposed to give you orders on what to do next. Knott's eyes widened when they found yours. Soon, they jumped back to Riddle's, and he jerked his body around, laughing into his elbow. You ignored Malfoy's curious gaze, and every other interested one. Right. You should get going now. The uniforms are clean, so... But You turned back toward the uniform you had been cleaning. That one's plenty cleaned. He walked past you, unbuttoned the front of his shirt, and you glanced away, embarrassment clinging to your every being. You felt his friend's eyes on you, but you kept your eyes on the ground. You can look now. He murmured your surname. Your head jerked toward Riddle, glaring as his snort sounded through the room. That one was yours? He glanced down. Isn't it obvious? You scoffed and shook your head, wagging a finger at him. Next time I see you, Riddle. You spun around expectantly. Well, make some room. I can't push through the lot of you, can I? As you moved through the gap created for you, Riddle called out, See you tomorrow, Ravenclaw. Screw you, Slytherin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hello, hi. I am the owner of this channel. I'm a woman show, so I record, I edit, and I write the stories, and I also market. Anyways, I did want to say that I will be posting on this channel again and my old channel, maybe sometimes, I'm not sure, as unseen circumstances have come up, and I have a lot more time now. So if you would like for me to read a story that you really enjoy or that you have written yourself, you can always contact me through the email on screen. I am always open to new stories. I don't really care about the genre or the character. I just really like reading. I have 3 bookshelves in my room, 4 if you count the mini one that I was gifted a few years ago. But yeah, that is all. Have a nice day, everyone. Mwah.